In chapter 37, we ended with Elihu magnifying the power, majesty, and unsearchable greatness of God. The things that we discussed in that chapter. God controls the storms, the snow, the winds. Man cannot fully understand God's work, and God is great in his power and justice. Therefore, we should fear him. And it's a healthy fear. It's not a shaking in your boots fear. I say it all the time. I say it's not Randy sitting underneath the sink crying, Daddy's going to kill Ralphie kind of fear. Chapter 38 opens with God answering Job out of a whirlwind, it tells us. And Elihu spoke of God's greatness, and now God will speak for himself here. Finally, he answers. This is another turning point of the book. So for nearly 35 chapters, Job questioned, his friends argued, and Elihu lectured. Because remember, the first few chapters were just a narration of what was happening. So we really heard from the arguing from all the people for about 35 chapters now, or as John Serber will tell us, for about a year. Yeah. So Job, but now the heavens. So now the heavens at last have answered. But God doesn't go straight into explaining Job's suffering, though. He begins by revealing his greatness. That's where God starts. It doesn't start with Job and suffering. He starts with, this is why I'm great. And that's truly the theme of the whole book. Sometimes God gives explanations, but often he gives us revelation of himself instead. Because that's what we truly need. We need him. This chapter 38, is the beginning of God's first speech to Job. God is not cruel to him, but he does confront him. The issue is not Job's suffering. It's that Job spoke beyond what he understood, and he was beginning to get to a place of, I was a good person, so I shouldn't be being treated like this. It was about the fairness of God was Job's problem, right? So that was the big problem here. So God asks a series of questions to Job here. His goal is not to humiliate him. That's not what he's looking to do. God is merely looking to establish the difference between creator and creature. I know it's a weird thing to call ourselves creatures, but in God's presence, that's kind of what we are, right? He loves us and adores us, of course, though. So the word creature can kind of come off as kind of weird. So let's go into chapter 38, and let's read the chapter 38. Let's go back up 38:1.
Just one quick question.
Yes.
Because I've always wondered this, and before I forget. When he says, who is this who darkens my counsel by words without knowledge? Is he talking to all of the people or just to Job?
I think he's talking to Job.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because this is all to Job. Like,
okay.
He's addressing Job.
Because
it said at the beginning, it says, I'll read verse 1. Verse 1 says, then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. So he's talking to Job. I would assume he's...
Verse 3 backs that up as well because it's talking to a specific person and not a group.
Yeah, right.
I always assumed it was a group.
Yeah, right.
I mean, what he's saying also applies to the rest of them, but he'll get to them in a minute.
Oh, yeah, right. Right, he has something special for them. So, okay, verse 2. Who is this who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourselves like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. So God finally speaks, but as I say finally, I realize, this is God's timeline. It's not he finally spoke, he spoke, right? We can't have that. I think it's a bad attitude, like, oh, God, finally, right? So, it's so funny, because just recently, I sent a text like, hey, the hats are ready, and the person went, finally. And immediately I was like, wow, that's kind of insulting. But it's probably, they probably didn't mean it that way, but it kind of can sound that way. Right, but anyways, it's not finally God speaks, it's God is speaking now. The time of quietness is over, and you can go through the Bible time after time after time. When David was anointed king and he had to go into the wilderness and hide from Saul for all those years and just wait and wait and wait. And we can think of Noah building the ark. Can you imagine being Noah and waiting? And then him and people going, rain, Noah, you're an idiot. You know, what rain? Water's gonna fall from the sky. Can you just imagine? And imagine the kids too. Like, hey guys, you got to come home. You got to come home from school today and help me build this boat that we got to build because we're gonna have a flood. Just imagine the kids, right? Like, oh, my dad's crazy, man. You know what I mean? So you can only imagine what it was like for them. But Job has suffered, right? And he has suffered for a long time. So just to hear God's voice is probably, it's probably uplifting to him, right? I mean, it would be to anybody, but I'm just saying, like, especially to him. We don't know how long this has been going on. So he's probably relieved, but I don't think he's going to like what God says throughout this chapter. Because if you read this, it can feel like an attack, but I don't think that's what God's trying to do to him.
More like a reprimand.
Right, in a way. So God...
Could it even also be the way, remember how, like, when Jesus told Peter, you know, when the rooster crows 3 times, right? And we know that Jesus looked at him, and it wasn't a look of disgust,
Right.
but it was just a look of,
Oh,
it's
Peter.
okay.
Oh, Peter.
I
Like
knew
it
it was going to
right.
happen.
Right. Yeah, it was
Right?
compassion, right.
Right?
I agree with
Maybe
that.
it's something like that, like similar to that.
Right.
Like, I knew it was going to come to this.
Right.
You know, like something like similar to that, maybe. Like just to put it in comparison. You know. I don't know.
So the actual whirlwind here shows majesty and power from God. He's just coming in with a big interest. It's holiness and authority. That's what God's showing. It's not going to be some calm thing. It was probably almost the equivalent of like a helicopter landing, I would imagine, right? It's just
or a tornado.
right, or a tornado. That's probably more a better accurate thing to say there. I'm sure God didn't come down in a helicopter, you know. But he came down in a whirlwind. It was probably powerful and amazing and unbelievable. You know, so he's arriving as God, the sovereign king, right? That's who God is coming down as. He confronts Job. It's Job's limited understanding right off the bat. He just goes right at it. He just tells him with the question he asks. He said, who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? And that was the big concern with Job is that he was talking about things he didn't possibly understand. Job spoke with honesty, but he didn't always speak with wisdom. So we can do that a lot. We can say things that are say things that are true, but they're not always the smartest thing to say. That's why I'm going to compare this to, like, let's just say you're hanging out with somebody and they keep maybe like doing things that are a little off color, or do you think you need to point it out to them every time they do something wrong? I don't think so. I don't think we need to be sin sniffers and tell everybody everything they do wrong all the time. Nobody wants to hang out with anybody like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And John's laughing, but because I just kind of had something like this happen recently. I kind of had like a rough discussion with a person, and then he came to make it right with me. And I said, listen, I'm just nervous, and I'm preaching tomorrow, and I need to get rest, and blah, blah, blah. And then the person leaned over me and went, you should trust the Holy Spirit and not be nervous. And I just I went, I can't win, So anyways, so that's what I'm talking about. Don't be a sin sniffer. Just support people and love on people. There are times to convict people and to rebuke them, but it's not every step they take of every day. Just want to put that out there. Okay. So, sincerity alone does not equal accuracy. Verse 3 makes me want to grunt like Tim Allen. Let's read that again. Now prepare yourself like a man, right? Like a man. Right, it just makes me want to grunt like Tim Allen did on Home Improvement. If you're younger, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So
They know the sound, they don't know where it's from.
Right, so this makes me think, pull up your bootstraps, get to work, fellas, right? Rub dirt in it and put duct tape over it. That's what God's telling Job.
That would actually respond that way.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, we're called to be strong men, right? We're called, and I think it's important. One thing a man needs to learn is we need to learn how to take a rebuke, and we need to learn how to take advice from others. I think the Proverbs actually tells us that people that don't take advice are fools. They're idiots. I think it even says they're stupid. I think it might be in Proverbs 12. A man that doesn't take advice is stupid. I think it actually says that in the proverb, if you have New King James. So, remember earlier in the book, we talked about courtroom drama, like Job. Job wanted to question God, and he had grievances with God. Well, now God is questioning Job like he's he's the defendant and God is the judge asking him questions, right? That's kind of where we've gotten to. So verse 4, it says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." So it's obvious that Job wasn't there for creation. So I'm sensing a little bit of sarcasm from God, which makes sense because he created sarcasm. So I would think that he's allowed to use it. But like he's speaking my love language here. Like I'm loving this. Not really, but like seriously, he's just trying to make it clear with Job who's the boss.
So even in from 3 to 4, so in 3,
God starts from origin because creation itself proves his wisdom, right? Because everything we see is him, and he created it with his own hands. He's talking about measurements, and that shows that the universe is not random, and it reflects an intelligence and an order that God puts in place. It's construction imagery we're seeing here. Foundations, cornerstone, stability. And that's that's what God does. He brings stability to situations. That's why when people want to say, like, don't be a planner, don't do this, I really think we need to do both. I think we need to be planners and have plans drawn out because God does. But the problem is when those plans go haywire because God says, that's not a good idea, we're going to do this instead. We have to adapt to what God wants from us and take the right detours that he gives us and not try to ram through a roadblock. That's what I think we're called to do because God is a God of order. That doesn't mean like if I have an agenda for this week and Cindy gets in my way, I'm going to kick her out of the house and change the locks on the doors. No, that means we're going to make adjustments as we go because that's what godly people do. But there's nothing wrong with being planners. God loves order. He is a God of order. You see it every day in the sunrise. You see it in the way the planets move. They can predict comets. They can predict the movements of the planets. They can predict, sometimes they can predict the weather, but the weather's tricky, right? But God is painting a picture of creation being a perfectly designed building. The stars likely being angels rejoicing in creation. And it says here that his creation inspired worship. It says that in verse 7, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So his creation inspired the angels to sing in heaven as he created earth. How beautiful is that? Mm-hmm. Verse 8 says, "Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band. When I fixed my limit for it and set bars and doors. When I said, this far you may come, but no further, and here your proud waves must stop." So what are some of the things that we think of when we think of the sea or the oceans? What do we think of?
I know what you think of.
What?
Sharks.
Sharks getting eaten. That's a different story.
I just think of power. I just think of the power of it.
Yeah.
The power, yeah, absolutely.
It's like,
calmness. I think of.
Eternity. That's a good one, Josie.
I think beauty, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. One time we went on vacation and we were on the 8th floor of the eighth-story building, and when you went out in the morning, the ocean was right there. It was awesome.
Something else I think of. So, okay, if you don't know,
Okay, so
I married him. I chose him.
also some people think the oceans and the seas are mysterious. But in that time frame, in the times, even well into history, you can go back to like Christopher Columbus and all that stuff. The waters represented chaos and danger to them. That's why nobody had been over to America until what is it, 1492, right?
Columbus sailed the ocean.
Well, you know what I mean, though. Think about that. Think about it. After the new society is born and Jesus' death and all that, and we really begin to progress as a civilization. They still went another 1,400 years before they traveled across the ocean. So, it was just danger and chaos is what they found in the oceans. So, so God sets boundaries on that chaos. So he chose to not have America discovered until that time because he used the oceans as that boundary for people. So the sea is pictured here as a newborn emerging from the womb, and God birthed it and governs it. It's his domain. Everything's his domain, and he governs it. The clouds and darkness become garments for the sea, and God limits it with boundaries. More boundaries God created. Even the oceans obey God, and we see that all through Jesus' life. How many times did Jesus have things with the waterways, right? He controls things that feel uncontrollable, and not just seas. That's child play for him. So just if he can control the seas and all of that, what do you think he can do for your life? What do you think he can do for that emotion that you can't seem to control? What do you think he can do with the situation in your life that is just not going the way you wished it would? He can control it. He can fix it. We just have to put our trust in him. And that's because remember, to govern the seas is child's play to him. Okay, verse 12. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It takes on form like clay under the seal, and stands out like a garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and an upraised arm is broken. So Job doesn't have the power to make the sun rise. God does daily what men can't do at all. So, like, just to make the sun go up, that's all order, though. It's all an order that he put in place. They know exactly where the sun's going to come up, what time. It's all on your weather app, folks. You can go in there. I think you can ask your iPhone, and it tells you the sun will rise. But you can actually ask it, when will the sun break the horizon? Because that's whenever it's beautiful. When the sun rises out here, it's like you're dying in the Sahara Desert. Trust me, I regret not getting a roof on it. But that's just something that God. It's an easy thing for him. Men can't even comprehend it. The dawn. It says here, the dawn exposes wickedness. The dawn, of course, is when the sun comes up, right? I'm just making sure everybody knows that dusk is going down. Dawn is coming up, right? The dawn of a new day. Darkness hides evil, and light reveals it. Jesus tells us this. I didn't reference the scripture here. I probably should have. But I don't know exactly where it is in the Bible. But what does Jesus tell us? He tells us that nothing will be hidden. I think it's in Matthew 8, maybe. I might have it right there. Matthew 8, I think it might be, where he talks about how the darkness, secrets, you can't keep secrets. They're going to eventually be exposed. So you can get together with all your little friends and talk about people, but, God's going to expose those things. He's going to expose everything. And if it doesn't get exposed in this life, it'll be exposed whenever you go sit in front of him at the white throne judgment. So, Luke 17, I was close. Matthew 8, that's close.
Matthew 10. No, so Matthew 10:26.
Okay, I missed it by 2 chapters. Okay.
Luke 8 and also Matthew 10.
Oh, so it was Luke 8.
Yeah, Luke 8 and Matthew 10.
Okay, I was close. I thought I said Matthew 8. Okay, so God is the one who brings hidden things into the light. So if you want to live a life of secrecy and you want to keep secrets and do things in the darkness, God's going to eventually expose them. Especially if you're going to walk around and claim to be one of his children. I think he even does it to people that aren't his children. That's why we see so many scandals and stuff in the news. Because he's going to expose that darkness. We're seeing it right now in Minnesota. What is that? $290 million in fraud. They just arrested 15 people. They got exposed. The Lord did it. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. But that sounds like something the Lord would do, because who wants to see that go on? So, verse 16, have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. So Job has never explored the deep places of the ocean, but God has. There's probably barely anybody that's ever explored the deepest parts of the ocean. We may have some remote control subs that have gone to those parts, but I doubt any man has. We've seen recently what the oceans do. That sub that went down and like 5 or 6 people died inside that. I think it might have just been 5. And then just recently, how about those 4 people that dove in that cave and they got stuck in the cave and they ended up dying? Imagine being the one girl that said, I don't feel like going out today, and then she sat up there and nobody ever came up to the surface. They were actually able to recover the bodies, but they don't really know what happened. They don't know if, like, they think like a current came and swept them into the caves and they got stuck in the caves, and that's why they died. So I don't like going in tight spaces. I don't think I'd add water to that either. And I guess it was called Shark Cave, so I definitely wasn't going in there. So Job knows suffering, and it can seem like we're at the gates of death when we're suffering. We're in a serious situation. Job probably felt like he was dying. I mean, they probably thought he was dying, but God knew he wasn't dying. But what God's saying, it doesn't mean you have the ultimate knowledge of death, Job. Just because you think you were close, you weren't even close to death, Job. You just women will probably say he probably just had a cold. So the earth is entirely beyond Job's understanding, and our perspective is tiny compared to God's divine knowledge. Go ahead, Cindy. All right, verse 19. Where is the way to the dwelling of light, and darkness, where is its place? That you may take it to its territory, that you may know the paths to its home. Do you know it because you were born then, or because the number of your days is great? So God is asking where light and darkness dwell. This is a poetic and profound thing that God says here, because even the basic things of this world exceed our understanding. Where does light even come from? Where does darkness dwell? Really, darkness is just running from light, right? So that's what it kind of looks like. But it's a basic thing, but we can't really understand it. Verse 21 says has another kind of feel of sarcasm a little bit. God invented it, so he can use it, like I said before. But though that statement, he's exposing human limitation. Verse 20, let me read it again. Do you know it because you were born then, or because the number of your days is great? So what he's saying is he's exposing our limitations as people. I know we can only live so long, we can only experience so much, but God experiences everything. He has no limits in his life. He doesn't, he's eternal. So it just shows our limitation as people. Verse 22, have you entered the treasury of snow, or have you seen the treasury of hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble? For the day of battle and war, by the way is light, diffused, or the east wind scattered over the earth. Who has divided the channel for the overflowing water, or the path of the thunderbolt to cause it to rain on the land where there is no one, a wilderness in which there is no man, to satisfy the desolate waste, and to cause to spring forth the growth of tender grass? Has the rain a father, or who has begotten the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice, and the frost of heaven, who gives it birth? The waters harden like stone, and the surface of the deep is frozen. So God controls the weather completely. Snow and hail are described like stored treasures of God. I mean, we all admire the beauty of the snow, right? We don't so much like shoveling it, but we love the look of it. We don't really admire hail too much and the dents it puts in our cars, but back then, I don't think they were really worried about it. But you just think about almost like the manna falling, right? Almost like snow. What a beautiful picture of that.
I'm crazy not knowing what hail is. What is going on?
Yeah.
First time to feel.
22 and 23, you said, Gabe?
That sounds like Armageddon.
Well, like the end of Native Americans, it's El Tornado.
Literally,
They call it
Man, yeah, it could be.
That sounds like one of the last bowl judgments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad,
Yes.
this might be a Gabe.
26, it talks about rain falling where humans are absent. And what that shows us is creation isn't just centered around us. There's an ecosystem here, and God cares about even the places we aren't. So the deep parts of the ocean, the rainforest where there's no people, the mountains of West Virginia where there's no people. Well, there probably are people, but just everywhere there's no people. It's all part of the ecosystem, and God cares about it. He cares about the whole planet. God asks if rain has a father here, which is kind of strange, right? But who produces the frost and the ice? The answer to all those questions is God and God alone. So I guess God is the Father of rain, right? So he's trying to prove a point here to Job. Verse 31, can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades? I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Or loose the belt of Orion?
Pleiades.
Or can you bring out Mazaroth in its season? Or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? Do you know the ordinances of heaven? Can you set the dominion over the earth? So this is likely speaking of constellations, and I just want to make it clear that horoscopes does not mean there's not constellations are not godly. Constellations were used for the sailors to travel, and then people took it and turned it into horoscopes, fortune telling, and just so if you read those still as a Christian, you're not going to go to hell or anything like that. But what I'm saying is they generalize statements so that you're going to relate to it. So there's no real.
I don't read it.
There's no real. Me and Cindy used to actually long time ago. We actually had books and stuff on it. Now we get it now. But I'm just saying don't rely on things like horoscopes. And this doesn't mean they're okay because they talked about a couple constellations and in the Bible. Constellations are cool and they should be looked at and admired, and it's cool to know them. I'm going to tell you this right now. Every time I look up at the sky, I swear I look at Orion's belt. I see it every time I look in the sky, and it's generally right over top of our house a lot of the times. So I always see it, and I usually can find the Big Dipper and Little Dipper.
Yeah, I like
You got something, Jesse?
I want to bring it back to.
So I just want to clear that up so that everybody understands that horoscopes are probably not an okay thing, but constellations were used for a purpose. So what he's saying is that God governs the cosmos as well, like Josie just so beautifully said. He established that for purposes, and it says it in Genesis. I wish I would have left the phone recording there. But Job cannot control the stars, the seasons, or the heavenly order above. Verse 34, can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that the abundance of water may cover you? Can you send out lightnings, that they may go and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the mind? Or who has given understanding to the heart? Who has numbered the clouds of wisdom? Or who can pour out the bottles of heaven? When the dust hardens in clumps, and the clods cling together. So once again, God tells us all the things he can do that Job can't. True wisdom itself comes from God. I love that in verse 36. I love what that says. Who has put wisdom in the mind, right? And God has put wisdom in our minds. And remember that knowledge and wisdom are two different things. So you gain knowledge through study and living your life. And then that knowledge turns into wisdom and time. And wisdom is just, it's giving wise counsel. It's making right decisions. It's being mature. That's what wisdom is. Right.
Yeah, I think.
It's application of the knowledge, like Cindy just said. And he says, who has he given understanding to the heart, right? The heart. Everybody thinks organ, but in the Bible, the heart is like your soul. It's everything that you are. It's your likes, your dislikes. That's your heart. Our heart is where we find compassion and all the good things, right? But there's a lot of bad things too, because the heart is deceptively wicked also.
Yeah.
Without God as the center of it. So God controls rain cycles and drought. Once again, creation answers him constantly. So that's where we're actually going to stop, because I know there's 3 more verses, but this is a case where it's a terrible chapter break, because the next whole chapter is all about animals. So I don't know why they didn't stop at 38, because the last 3 verses are about animals, and most of 39 is about animals. So we're actually going to stop there with the verses. But God's wisdom is beyond human wisdom. That's what we've learned tonight. Job wanted answers, but God first must establish his authority with him. If you've ever worked in a workplace, when a new boss comes in, they tend to like to establish their authority. And not that God's a new boss or anything, but he's trying to reestablish things because things have gone a little haywire. The natural world is evidence of divine intelligence and sovereignty. And our knowledge is limited. It is. And when we overdo it and try to search out things that are way beyond our limitations, that's when we get lost in the things Sure, Job is righteous, but he's still finite. He's not infinite, right? He doesn't have eternal. He's not eternal like God. I mean, he's going to be with God for eternity, but without God, he's just a mortal man. God is sustaining everything constantly around you, whether it's your life or your relationships, the grounds you walk on, the oceans, the stability the moon gives us and helps our oceans stay the way they are. And the cycles of all the planets. He is the one that keeps that constant. The universe doesn't run itself. God is actively governing it. It isn't just spin a wheel and let the world go until it stops running. That's not what God's doing here. Job wanted an explanation for suffering, but God gave him a revelation of sovereignty. And what is sovereignty? Sovereignty is not needing anybody else, right? That's what that means. God doesn't need us. He's outside of time and space. He's sovereign. That's what it means. Because sometimes our greatest comfort isn't knowing all the answers. It's knowing that there is a God who loves us. And he is the one who is holding everything together. So that's all I have for you tonight. Short